My grandfather on my dad's side, he came to America in the late 1800s, early 1900s from Syria to escape religious persecution. He landed in New York, met his wife, and ended up moving to eastern Kentucky. He then had 8 boys and 3 girls. One of those boys was my father, W.G. Harding Daugherty. And if you've done your history homework, you realize that's the name of one of our past presidents, W.G. Harding. My grandfather named 3 of my uncles and my father after past presidents. My grandfather's 2 brothers migrated not to America, but they migrated to Santo Domingo, which is in the Dominican Republic, the islands just south of Florida. My mother left Lebanon when she was 3 and went to Santo Domingo to be raised by her family, of course, down there. So my dad was, I guess, early 20s, but he had an older brother. Of course, there were 8 of them, but he had an older brother who was next in line to get married. So my grandfather said to my uncle, my dad's brother, hey, my 2 brothers in Santo Domingo know of this nice Lebanese family down there, and they've got a daughter who's of marrying age. Why don't you come with me and let's meet her? And my uncle said, no, thank you, I will find my own wife. So my dad was next in line, and so my grandfather said to my dad, well, do you want to go? And he said, sure, let's go. So they went to Santo Domingo, where my grandfather's 2 brothers were, and that's where they met my mom, because my mom was the eligible lady down there. And so they started dating and fell in love and got married. My mom's first experience of the United States really was Whitesburg, Kentucky. And that was back in the 1940s, I guess. And so it was a coal town, booming, the family business. We had, at that time, probably 4 stores. It was clothing, and they probably had, luggage and shoes and makeup and cosmetics, but mainly clothing. After my mother died, we were cleaning out all of her old files, and we found a bunch of love letters that my father had written to my mother back when they were dating. So of course they had met overseas, but they didn't stay together until they got married. He came back to the United States after they dated for a while, and they wrote, we think back in that generation people may have been a little different, but the love letters were the same as we wrote in high school. Their emotions were the same as ours were in high school. They were just giddy and in love. And we found that really touching because we had never really heard that side of my mom and dad's relationship. So that was neat to see that. And so after they get married, they come back to the United States. Well, my mom was a very traditional Catholic woman, and every night before she would go to bed, she would kneel down and pray her rosary, which is probably about a 15 to 20 minute or more prayer. And my dad would always fall asleep. And so after about 6 or 7 months, my aunts came up to my mom and said, her sisters-in-law, and said, aren't you pregnant yet? Actually, they went to my father, and my father said, well, girls, every time we go to bed, she prays, and I fall asleep. So then they went to my mom and said, Evelyn, go to bed first, pray later. And so after about 2 months, she was pregnant. So it was kind of, that's the story of how she finally started getting, and then once she got pregnant, she kept getting pregnant, and she had 9 pregnancies, 3 miscarriages, but 6 deliveries, so. That's a very interesting, it's a funny story. It's funny. So my dad died when I was almost 3, wasn't quite 3. So my mom had a 15-year-old, a 13-year-old, a 10-year-old, an 8-year-old, and then 2 2-year-olds. We were twins, my twin brother and I. And so my dad had had heart attacks off and on, but he had a major heart attack in 1965, and that's when he passed away. And that was a very tough event for the family because he was only 43. And he had, of course, 7 brothers and 3 sisters. He was the first one to pass away. And that was a big hit to the family, but what was really neat is that all of his brothers and sisters took good care of Mom and our family as we were growing up. Because you have to go back in time and think about this. You had a woman who really, my mom, even though she was highly intelligent, very intelligent, only got educated through the 8th grade because that's all her dad would let her do. He said, you're a woman, you don't need to get educated past 8th grade, but she went to finishing school. And so she was very good in all the trades that are dying today. She was great in sewing, great in cake decorating, great in cooking, all those finishing things that make a house a home. So she had no skill, no ability to work outside the home, and she barely spoke a lot of English, really, when my dad had died. And so that was one of the things that was real tough. She had to try to raise 6 kids on her own, basically. Okay, this is the picture of the ribbon cutting of our new Dawhares in Pikeville. The original Dawhares was opened in 1946 in downtown Pikeville. But as time progressed, Pikeville became like a lot of other big cities, and a lot of the shopping left downtown and went to the suburbs, to shopping malls and strip malls. Well, this is a picture of Dawhares in, I think, '92, opening its new location out in the strip center of Pikeville, up on the North Mayo Trail. So we've been in downtown Pikeville since 1946, and we kept that store open until 1994, I believe, and then we closed it after this store in the plaza had been open for about a year and a half. In 1992, our family business was named the Independent Retailer of the Year by the clothing, I'm not sure exactly which association, but it's one of the merchant associations in New York. It was a very prestigious award. It was a national award, and so we took a lot of pride in this award. Our business had been around basically since about 1910 or so, 1911, and actually 1907 is when we actually say we started. So in 1992, we won this award, and we'd been in New York making buying trips and forging relationships for probably 30, 40 years before this award, and had been very successful up to that point.